Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
Did you see me hanging out?
I thought I did, but I was like, was that her?
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's 6:30, and I would like to call to order the May 5th meeting of the City of Newberg Budget Committee. Can I have a roll call, please?
Solomon Allen.
Present.
David Vaughn.
Present.
Timothy Carpenter.
Here.
Beth Koshman.
Here.
Molly Olson. Jack Reardon.
Here.
Brad Sitton.
Here.
Rick Rogers.
Here.
Denise Bacon.
Here.
Jean Piros.
Here.
Stephanie Finley.
Here.
Julian Martinez Plancarte.
Present.
Elise Yarnell Holloman.
Here.
Patrick Johnson.
Here.
Is Molly on
Oh,
there?
and is Dan Quayler here?
Dan Coiler's here. I didn't hear an affirmative from Molly Olson. Is she on?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I'll wait on declaring the roll until we'll give her a minute or two. Madam Chair, I'll present save one.
Thank you. So as we're doing our Zoom meetings, everyone I think has been doing a great job. Just a couple reminders to please use the hand raising tool. Dan Coiler and I can see the hands. Okay, so Dan will help me. So just give me a minute. Sometimes it takes me a minute to see you and then to press the right button. And then each motion will be voted upon as a roll call vote. Yeah, and then during debate, I guess, I'll just want to spread the love and call on different people, maybe before people have a second chance to speak. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have no one physically present at City Hall, and I have not received any written comments for this evening.
Thank you. So that means we have had 0 public comment for this budget season so far. Okay, so it looks like our continued business is the deliberation of the budget. Matt, would you go over some of the questions and answers that you received and explained?
Yes. Good evening, Beth, Budget Committee. Yesterday, we sent out a supplemental packet, and hopefully each of you got that. We posted that to the website as well. And these were some questions and answers that came in subsequent to last week's meeting or shortly before last Thursday's meeting. So do you want me to just go through these one at a time?
Yes, please, if that makes sense to
Yep.
you.
Yeah, sure. So hopefully you've had a chance to read it, but the first question is, if the city is projecting a 16.5% ending fund balance as a percent of expenditures, does it follow that if we reduce the tax rate by 3% or not increase it by 3%, that the projected percentage would fall to 14.87, assuming a $200,000 decrease in revenue? I'll stop at that question. Well, is the tax revenue number correct? Does the ending fund balance appear somewhere that I'm not seeing? So in a nutshell, the math was correct on the person that was doing the calculation. We've since hired in finance, so they did such a nice job with the numbers that we brought them on board. No, just kidding. But The only difference is that 200,000 is not the amount of the revenue reduction. As we stated in the meeting last, it was about 155,000, so 154 and some change. So in fact, the answer has the right amount, and with the exact revenue estimate change of 154,959, the new ending fund balance would be 15.23%. And then I have some explanation about some additional changes that we would bring forward to the committee. It looks like an additional ending fund balance reduction of 20,951. And I think that actually was in the May 4th meeting packet that you received last Friday. So
Can you just
also,
remind us what that included?
yeah, actually, what I think it'd be better, we're gonna, well, that, are you asking about the 20,951? Okay. Yeah, in your packet, you will see a report called the changes to the 2020-2021 budget from proposed to approved as of 4/30/2020. And there's two line items on there. Hopefully everybody's looking at their packet and sees that. They're described as action number 1 and action number 2. And there's some changes that we are recommending to the budget committee to consider, an FTE increase in the HR specialist position, and a correction to the IT on-call pay. That netted in about a $15,000 impact on the general fund. And then we talked about the reduction in the construction excise tax revenue in Fund 14. That was the new fund that Doug described that was originally projected as 300,000. And because the council delayed in that decision, and we're going to start that mid-year, hopefully. So that took the revenue down, cut it in half, basically. And so as a result of cutting that revenue in half, we had to shift some of Doug's time that was going to get charged to construction excise tax back to the general fund. So that was the impact there. So that described, and that those two changes added to that 20,951. The only other thing that I put into the answer to the first question was just an explanation of what we mean by ending fund balance. And if this is to help answer the question number 3, does the ending fund balance appear somewhere that I'm not seeing? So ending fund balance is basically divided into two appropriation or two budget categories. Contingency are funds that can be tapped into during the year in the event of a unforeseen need, and that is allowable by budget law. That's around the 907,000, and that's a separate line item. And then right below that line item there's a line called unappropriated ending fund balance, and it's 1.1 million, and that has a greater amount of restrictions on it that basically can be tapped into at a very, very high threshold. It's like act of God type of activity, civil unrest type of thing. So I've in my career never seen that tapped into. So so you add those two together, and that's what we were talking about when we talk about ending fund balance. So it is not one item called ending fund balance. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions on that?
I was just going to tell Sue that Molly is here. Is there any other discussion about what Matt just explained? Molly, we're going over the questions and answers that Matt included. Questions and answers he received since the last meeting.
Thank you. Apologies for being late. Lost track of time.
Okay, so I'll move on to question number 2. STC is going down. This was mentioned a couple times last night, Thursday night. How much are these being reduced? So I reached out to Karen and asked her to put something into print for me. But she's basically describing that there was, as it says in the budget book, being reduced due to the slowdown in development, which was occurring even before the COVID pandemic occurred. And then as the COVID pandemic was reevaluated, there was some additional adjustments. And so ranging in about 18 to 25%. So I did not get into the specific numbers because there's 4 different sources of SDCs: street, water, sewer, and storm. So hopefully that provides at least some guidance on the amount. Question number 3, projected ending fund balance. What were the original projections for 2017 and 18? Excuse me, 2017-18 and 2018-19. And you can see in the numbers there that what I interpreted that question to mean is going back to the original budgets that were presented to budget committees as a proposed budget back during those fiscal years. And you can see that the first fiscal year referenced 17-18 was a 9.7 ending fund balance, and then the 18-19 was an 18.7 ending fund balance. And I've also included the dollar amounts there and a typo, looks like. So
Any questions or discussion? Okay, none appearing, Matt.
okay. Question number 4, sale of assets. How much did the sale of the fire equipment and animal shelter bring in? And those 2 numbers are there. 180,000 in the general fund from the sale of fire equipment, and about 82,000 into the general fund in 18-19. And since the question was, we've been focusing on the general fund, there was a couple other enterprise funds that used to own the land that stood to gain some revenue, but 82,000 is general fund. So, and question number 5, do you have a by fund spreadsheet that rolls up into the summary on page 11? It would help me to understand the relative impacts of each individual fund. Yes, we do. It has 3.5 times the amount of letters in the alphabet in columns couldn't even fit on the screen. So as we have, 27, 28 funds, it would be a large spreadsheet. Welcome to share that. What we talked about internally was seeing if we could get that into a more condensed report. That would be a good talking tool for those those of you that are interested and want to talk in the committee. So we're working on that and hoping to have that next month. So sharing the actual spreadsheet is it's all tied into a big model, and it's actually 3 spreadsheets that would be hard to even email. So would love to be, our aim is to be able to share that here in the next month. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay. How many years in a row has the 3% interest and property tax rate been increased? If you refer in your budget document to page 10, you can see that essentially we're entertaining our 2nd year under the new charter. In 18-19 was the first year that the city operated under the new levy maximum of $2.50. Our current fiscal year that we're in now, 19-20, was the first year in which it was increased by 3%. So, most of you remember last year's, conversations around that, and that was the very first year that had been done. So we're actually entertaining this for the 2nd year. And it looks like, Beth, that is the end of the questions, the new questions. I left the previous questions on that sheet. It looks like So it's all in one document, and we will, ultimately put this up on this is on the website, but the full history is there. So
Molly has a question, or yes, Molly.
Just quick, Matt, do you have an inflation rate that you guys use in your calculations in general? What are you looking at? So property tax, 3%. What's your inflation rate for your costs? Do you
we have
have
a lot. Yeah, we have a lot, actually. It really, if you peek under the hood of this engine, there's a lot of different rates that we use. For example, cost, if the city were to adjust personnel, there is a CPI that we look at, the consumer price index that we look at, that we monitor our wages against. And that would be, for example, this last year, if we were to have included that in the proposed budget, we would have been looking at a 2.7. For other components of personnel services, there are many different rates that we increase the different benefits by. For example, health insurance goes up 7 to 8% there. It's a different base, of course. It's not a percentage of salary, but it's a flat amount, and so that's a different inflator. Materials and services, 2 to 3% maybe. Capital projects, when we go out and do our master fee schedule every year, the engineering uses even a different inflator from the engineering cost of record, and I think that's driven more. It just has a different bucket of costs that drive capital projects. So things like cost of concrete, those sorts of things. So yeah, to answer your question, we don't use a single global rate. It really depends down to the specific expense that we're looking at or revenue that we're looking at.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Okay. So what do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys think? Molly, is your hand raised?
Yeah, I'll play the straight man, gender notwithstanding. It seemed like when we broke off last time, our conversation was wrapped around the property tax increase. So do we want to have a conversation on yes or no about that? Because that's the first thing we have to set, right, is the rate.
Jack?
Well, as I understand it, if I understand it properly, if we reduce the ending fund balance by that amount, it stays within the parameters of the percentage that you're looking for your the number that you shoot for, 15%. Is that correct? Am I reading that correct? Matt, help.
Yeah. If we're going back to the question number one, and we were to fall back down to 15.23%, it's within the it's close. The part of the description, part of the explanation I offered last time was that the percentage is a target. It's a best practice. What becomes more important at this point when you fall to this level of an ending fund balance is the actual dollars. As you go into next fiscal year, you might hit 25%, but if you only have 1.5 million, you can't rely on the percentage as a sole indicator of good health. So, as much as it's close, I think that, the proposal that we came forward with and the proposed budget of, $2,068,000 is more in line with where we were comfortable. But to answer your question, Jack, we would be down in the 15.23%.
So to follow on that, last meeting, there was a discussion about coming up with, staff coming up with $150,000 worth of cuts. What would those be if you left the ending fund balance the same and made some cuts?
I think we had decided that we were going to trust our city staff, if I'm correct. Dan Weinheimer, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've come up with some scenarios on cuts, and certainly we can talk about them. I think, to the extent that I guess I'd rather have a yes or no decision on the rate before, kind of getting into that too much. But I mean, we can certainly talk about them if that's the preference of the committee.
I'd like to hear from a couple more members first. Solomon?
Yeah, so I guess kind of on that same question, I guess what I was interested in is, are we planning on just taking that? I don't know if there's a split that's thought about, or if we're just going to take all of that out of the ending fund balance, or all of that will be taken care of in different, departments. Is there a decision on that at all?
Well, it's really got to tie back to the general fund. So, the funds, because we have so many, they don't all tie back to there. So like we had that discussion last time on Public Works and the vehicle fund, or that line item, I should say. It doesn't help us to cut that to be able to achieve that ending fund balance in the general fund, because it doesn't tie back and feed that general fund. So we're a little limited in where we can draw from to get the general fund number.
If I could follow up.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No. So I guess my other question that I would have then is there any way to kind of measure the impact that losing those funds from the possible increase in the property tax would have on all of the community, rather than just the impact that it would have on those with, homeowners who are going to have to pay that tax? If that makes sense.
I'm not sure I follow.
Would there be obvious, negative returns for community members, whether it's some kind of service reduction that could be somehow quantified compared to that increase in the property tax value for homeowners?
I guess it's a little bit subjective in that sense, because, the thought of what we're, I think to the extent to which we cut services or cut equipment to provide for services, I think what we're very much trying not to do right now is to cut additional staff, because that really does have a really cascading impact on our ability to provide service. And I think you would feel that direct impact. But to cut, the equipment and, some of the other tools we have, as it were, I think there is an argument to be made, yes, that the average resident will feel an impact. But what we're trying to do in doing these cuts is to look for ways to minimize that, I guess, and not cut a program, as it were. And I guess that's how I think about the budget in general is, what do I get is sort of what programs I consume. And, so we're trying to look a little bit differently at some of the equipment that, rather than the programs, if that makes any sense.
Thank you.
I see Stephanie's hand is up.
I'm in favor of the 3%. My concern is that this looks like a pretty bare bones budget compared to what we saw going into the budget process last year. And so I think staff has done a really good job of getting it to, where we need to be at the very minimum. And my concern is not doing the 3% leads us down a road where we're looking a couple years out and our 3% doesn't buy us the same thing that it buys us now. And we're looking at making bigger gains down the road instead of doing it in increments. And I'm in favor of doing things incrementally because I think on a household budget that has a smaller impact than coming at them a few years down the road, or us having things fall apart and need a lot more than what we could buy with our 3% now. So I'm definitely in favor of the 3%. I had a different feeling last year. I was a little more hesitant about it when we did the budget process last year because of the way the budget looked going into it. I think we got where we needed to be at the end, but we certainly, I feel like, started out in a better place with really looking at some pretty good numbers this year versus last year. So I'm definitely in favor of that.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there anyone else like to speak in favor of or against? Jack?
Well, I just want to jump in and agree with Stephanie. I made the same point last year that she's making, and that is that if you start cutting off your ability to raise that every year, you know, understanding this is a tough year and that it's probably one that might make it a little bit more questionable, but we should be raising that every year because obviously the city's requirement for funds goes up every year and a lot more than 3% usually, especially when you start looking at, and this year again was different because there's no raises suspended on what we have. We're living with the numbers now, but as you go forward, you're going to have those increases, which are more than the 3%. So I think you should be taking that 3% every year.
Thank you, Jack. Denise?
I am also in favor of the 3%. The city's costs go up 3% or more, and we have to keep up or we're just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And been there once, don't want to be there again. It's hard to get out of.
Thank you. Elise?
I'm right where everyone is. I'm in favor of it as well. Similar to what Denise said, I don't want to be in a situation similar to what we inherited a few years ago. So would rather prevent that, and I agree with Stephanie in the incremental planning.
And it sounds like Lincoln is also in favor.
He's in favor, yeah.
Does that count?
If we need it for a quorum, right?
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Rogers, what do you think? It seemed like last week you weren't so hot on the idea.
Yeah, my position really hasn't changed. And like I said last week, I have a hard time not providing a cost of living increase to our employees, but yet passing up 3% increase to our property owners, which could be the same people. So that's it. But I'm not going to follow my proverbial sword for it. So I'm happy to go with the way the committee votes, but I will vote
no. Julie, you go by Jules, right?
Yeah. So I'm also in favor of 3% because talking to some families, I know that having a 3% increment seems more doable than later on having higher percentage. So thinking of that, I think it's easier for a lot of like the low income community to digest that 3%.
Thank you. Solomon?
Yeah, I guess I would say I'm in favor as well, and especially if we're looking at the possible reduction in revenues in other parts that might be lower than what we're even projecting, that losing out on that could seem even more problematic.
Is there anyone that would be against the 3% increase? Okay, none appearing. Could we get a motion to approve that, Matt, or is it for Truman, or does it all go into one statement?
Yeah. I don't think you need to make a motion to do something that's already built into the proposed budget.
Right.
If you want to make, it's the committee's call on what you want to make a motion about, but I don't believe you would need to make a motion to not take an action, if you will.
Right, okay, it's already in there. Perfect. Mr. Rogers.
All right, I will make a motion then. And I think, Matt, please check the numbers, but I make a motion that the Budget Committee of the City of Newberg approve the budget for the 2021 fiscal year in the amount of $109,722,272 and approve property taxes for the 2020-21 fiscal year at the rate of 2.6523 per thousand of assessed value for permanent rate tax levy. And that includes the 3%, I believe, if I got the numbers right, Matt.
Second.
Are numbers right, Matt?
I'm appealing to Caleb to throw up on the screen those numbers. I was going to also, there was two items that we'd like to include on the changes to the proposed budget before it gets approved. And if I'm checking in with Caleb to see if he's in the wings and could throw that up. It's a very minor net change.
I'm here.
Okay. Make that as big as possible if you could, sir.
How's that?
Okay. So I don't mean, I apologize to interrupt the motion in a second, but if what you see on the screen are just a couple different actions that we need to correct that we just caught in the last day. On item number 1, this was on your packet that you received on Friday. We had the opportunity, I suppose, to freeze a position that became vacant, and that created a positive. Caleb, can you mute your mic? Thanks. That created a positive impact on the general fund, essentially it would be adding back to the ending fund balance. And so that used to be that item number 1 used to be a negative 15,000, basically a reduction of the end fund balance. And so that attrition basically wiped out that negative impact. Item number 5 on the list in front of you on the screen is a correction that that we looked at today that was a health insurance omission from the planning manager position in the planning department. And that's a position that Doug has for the upcoming year. So that was that's a $25,000 swing. So the net impact between the proposed budget and the approved budget will be just a reduction of $31,000 to the ending fund balance. And Caleb, if you were to scroll down to the bottom of the screen, Rick, this is our opportunity to validate your number. It's going to be slightly different, but this is the number that would be presented to the budget committee to approve for the budget with the changes that we've described on this sheet.
All right.
If you'd like, I can read that out to you.
Yeah, I think I can see it. If you want me to amend my motion, I can do that.
I think that would be great.
Okay, so the amended, and it's the amended motion is, I make a motion that the budget committee of the City of Newberg approve the budget for the 2021 fiscal year in the amount of, here it is, 109,575,511. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And approve property tax for the 2020-21 fiscal year at the rate of 2.6523 for $1,000 of assessed value for a permanent rate tax levy.
Did you say 2.6523 as the rate, sir?
That's what I said. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I agree.
Okay.
Caleb, can you, well, I can't see anyone's hands, but.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Jack. You're muted.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm still in shock when I saw $25,000 for health coverage for one person per year. Is that correct?
That is for a full family coverage.
Oh, wow.
So we have 5 tiers in our healthcare insurance coverage, and we assume a full family in the event that an employee is covering kids and a wife or husband, spouse.
Okay, that's a little less shocking. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Stephanie?
Yeah, this is less discussion. This is actually something I just wanted to make a disclosure that I consulted with Susan at the State Ethics Commission before Budget Committee convened, because at the time of that we convened for this budget, there was an active recall petition against me by a Newberg Dundee Police Department officer. And so after consultation with the State Ethics Commission, it was determined that I don't have a potential or actual conflict with proceeding to vote on the budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Do you need another second since he amended the motion?
I think Patrick has second.
Oh,
Okay.
great.
I seconded it.
Rick?
Yeah, as with Stephanie, I need to disclose the same, the active recall petition. And again, that's, yeah, so ditto what Stephanie said.
Thank you. Jack?
Well, I guess I should make a disclosure too. I ran into Beth on the street the other day and said, "Hi, how are you doing on the virus staying in?" She said, "Great, I don't like it." I said, "Yeah, I don't like the budget committee process online either." End of discussion.
I have a disclosure. He did say that. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to approve the budget in the numbers previously said by Rick Rogers. Can I get a roll call vote?
Solomon Allen,
Yes.
David Bond,
Yes.
Timothy Carpenter,
Yes.
Beth Koshman,
Yes.
Molly Olson,
Yes.
Jack Reardon,
He's muted.
Jack Reardon,
Yes.
Brad Sitton,
Yes.
Rick Rogers,
I guess I'm going lone wolf, no.
Denise Bacon,
Yes.
Jean Pieros,
Yes.
Stephanie Finley,
Yes.
Julia Martinez Plancarte,
Yes.
Elise Yarnell Holloman,
Yes.
Patrick Johnson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I have 13 yes, 1 no vote.
Okay, so the budget is approved. I see cheers. Anything else anyone would like to say? And oh, yes, Dan Weinheimer.
Yeah, I wanted to potentially wrap this up, but at least just acknowledge the work of staff. Obviously, I think in my my budget message and the discussion leading into this committee, we talked about how much changed in the time that we went from presenting budget options to me to the point we're at now. And, I appreciate how much work that is to pivot. And in particular, I want to recognize the finance staff. They've had a lot on their plate, with the budget. Generally, it's obviously a busy time, but, we had, the Berg program, the Support Local program, both in their laps, along with, sort of the mundane of payroll and, kind of the normal accounts payable and things like that. So, they've had a very busy month or two or 3 or 4. And I just want to recognize how busy they've been, but also how much they've shouldered to get us to this point. And acknowledge also the rest of the department staff. Obviously this is a big change, unfortunately. I am sort of sympathetic, empathetic to the community impacts that the mayor talked about, and to the staff impacts, of not having raises is huge. And I'm apologetic, I guess, as much as I can be to our staff that that's part of balancing the budget right now. I'm appreciative of the work that they do, but I'm appreciative as well that we're going to be busy and we're going to be living with what we had this last year. So with all of that, I just want to say thank you to everybody, and I want to also thank the committee for the work on this. I know it's a lot, night meetings and going through a lot of information. So I just want to say thank you.
Denise?
Dan just kind of did it for me. I wanted to thank the staff and all of you for being here and hanging in. And I wanted to bring up for maybe next year, if we could look at the 2-hour limit and kind of shorten the span so the staff doesn't have to be here. They work during the day, and so do we. I'd rather get it out of the way faster with less meetings, but we can address that next year.
Rick Rogers.
I wanted to, again, echo the same thing. Kudos to the staff. It's a difficult time to try and to be budgeting. So kudos to all the staff, and Beth, to you as well for pushing, getting us through this process. And thank you, for us electeds, this is part of what we do, but for you all, you're doing it literally out of the goodness of your heart and for the betterment of the community. So thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rick. Jack?
Well, I think how smoothly the process went, considering the fact that we're doing this without face-to-face interaction, which really works really well in this kind of a process. I think the fact that it went so smoothly speaks to what a great job the the staff and the new city manager have done in putting together this budget.
Anybody else have anything wonderful to say about what a great job we all did?
Go team.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so same thing. Thank you, staff. Thank you, department heads. Thank you to committee members. And this worked so well, maybe we should just do it next year too.
You're gonna have problems, girl.
We'll just stay here. All right, well, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We'll see you all next year.
Bye-bye. Goodbye-bye.
Thank you.